Okay, so you know how baking sometimes gets this reputation? Like it's super rigid and rule-bound.
Yeah.
You mess up one tiny thing and boom, your souffle's flat.
Right, right. Like it's all about precision, no room for creativity.
Exactly. But what if, and hear me out here, what if that's not the whole picture? Like what if we could approach baking with more, I don't know, flexibility, a little bit more like artistic freedom?
And that's exactly what we're going to be looking at today.
Okay.
We're diving deep, no pun intended, into Dessert Person by Claire Saffitz.
Well, I love that book.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's not just like your typical recipe book. It's more about how baking can be versatile, adaptable,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it even has a whole section on savory baking, which is not something you see every day.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And I think what makes Saffet so cool is she's not like, some chef who's only ever worked in these fancy restaurants. She was in the Bon Appetit test kitchen.
Oh, yeah. She really knows her stuff.
Yeah, so she gets it. She gets the challenges of working at home. Like real people, limited time.
Budgets.
Yeah, budgets. And let's be honest, sometimes things just don't turn out looking like, magazine perfect.
Totally. And, something that really struck me is that Saffitz actually said she wrote Dessert Person as this, like, friendly nudge to anyone who thinks baking isn't as creative as other types of cooking.
Interesting. So like a defense of dessert.
Yeah, kind of. So our deep dive today is all about exploring how this book really empowers home bakers, like you guys listening.
I like that. Empowering home bakers.
Yeah, and we'll look at how it takes away some of the mystery of baking, encourages people to experiment and hopefully just makes them feel more confident in the kitchen.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's jump right in. This whole concept of being a dessert person. Saffitz makes it clear from the start that this book is it's a celebration of all things sweet. But it's not just her personal love letter to sugar.
No, it's
No.
definitely not that. It's more than that. One of the main things I got from it was how much she wants to help those people who are a little hesitant about baking. She really breaks things down. Trying to make the recipes less scary, you know?
And the way she structures the recipes is so smart.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's not just ingredients and instructions. She gives you all this extra information.
Like what?
So she has these little notes that explain the reasoning behind some of the steps.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So, for example...
Okay, so she'll explain why you need cold butter for flaky pie crust.
Ah, for the steam pocket.
Yes. Or, how to whip egg whites to that perfect consistency for a meringue.
Interesting.
It's all about understanding the how and the why, which I think really
Yeah.
speaks to, what our listeners are looking for.
Oh, definitely. They want to learn. They want to know the reasons.
Yeah. They don't want to just blindly follow a recipe. They want to understand it. So this approach is perfect because it's you gain knowledge quickly, thoroughly, but you're not overwhelmed.
It's like having a baking expert right there with you in the kitchen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit. What about Saffitz's actual baking style? What are some of her, signature things?
Well, one thing you'll notice right away is she loves seasonal ingredients.
Oh, makes sense.
Yeah, and especially fruit. She's got all these recipes that really showcase whatever's fresh at the time.
So smart. Use what's in season.
Exactly. And she even has this, mental checklist. Her ideal desserts are either crispy or chewy or cakey or custardy or buttery.
It's a good way to think about it. What kind of texture are you going for?
Exactly.
Love that.
But it's not just about texture. She's also really big on balancing flavors.
Yeah, that's so important.
Oh,
especially with desserts, right?
Oh, totally. And this is where it gets interesting. She'll use bitter things like tahini or unsweetened cocoa powder to add complexity. It's not just all sweetness.
Right. So it's bitter, sour, salty, all those things working together to offset the sweetness.
Exactly. And it makes the dessert so much more, I don't know, sophisticated.
Oh, for sure. More interesting.
Yeah, and that balancing act, it carries over to texture too. You'll find recipes for crispy-edged cookies or chewy centers or those amazing flaky tart crusts she's known for.
Oh my gosh, yes, the tart crust. And another thing I notice is she really seems to love those desserts that are meant to be shared.
Oh yeah, she's all about sharing.
Yeah, like a whole pie or cake. It's not just individual servings.
It's about bringing people together. And there's another thing I wanted to mention about presentation.
Okay, yeah.
You know how there's this pressure nowadays to make everything look perfect, Instagram worthy?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Well, Saffitz is forget that. For her, if a dessert tastes amazing, That's what matters most.
I love that.
Yeah. So the flavor guides the decoration, which is usually pretty simple anyway.
That's refreshing, right?
Oh, totally. Like,
Yeah.
it takes the pressure off. You don't have to be a professional food stylist.
Okay, so let's say you have the book, you're excited, you're ready to bake. How do you choose what to make?
Well, first of all, she's got this great difficulty rating system. It goes from 1, which is very easy, to 5, very challenging.
Okay.
So you can kind of gauge right away how complicated a recipe is.
Makes sense.
And within each chapter, she's actually arranged the recipes by difficulty.
Oh, that's a clever way to do it.
Yeah, so you can start with the easier ones and gradually build your skills.
So you're not jumping straight into, like, the 5-star super challenging recipe.
Right, and the cool thing is it's not just random. The book is structured so that the techniques you learn in those easier recipes actually set you up for the harder ones later on.
Oh, I see. So it's like a learning progression.
Yeah, so for example, you might master pâté, which is that light pastry dough, and pastry cream. Those are both level 2.
Okay.
And then that prepares you perfectly for, let's say, a level 4 black sesame Paris Bresse.
Ah, that's so smart.
Right. And this kind of structure shows that she respects your time. It allows you to develop your skills naturally.
Like a baking curriculum. I love it. Now, she also talks about understanding the architecture of a recipe. What does she mean by that?
Yeah, so that's one of those aha moments Saffitz hopes you'll have as you're baking from her book. It's about, like, moving beyond just following the steps and understanding why those steps are there, what they're actually doing.
I see. So it's like you're not just blindly creaming butter and sugar together.
Right. You understand that it's incorporating air, which is going to make your cake lighter.
Right. Got it.
Or like knowing to chill pastry dough because you understand how temperature affects the fat and the gluten.
Interesting.
Or why cold eggs are easier to separate. You know, once you get that underlying structure, baking becomes so much less intimidating.
More intuitive, yeah.
Exactly.
So like you're not just following a recipe, you're like understanding it.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk equipment. What are some things that Saffitz recommends having in your kitchen?
Okay, so for equipment, she's got it all broken down into these really helpful categories.
Okay.
So for cooking on the stovetop, which you often have to do for dessert, she says you need a variety of saucepans and skillets, different sizes.
Okay, makes sense.
For mixing, she suggests metal or tempered glass bowls. Again, different sizes.
Yeah, because sometimes you need a huge bowl and sometimes you just need a small one.
Right. And then, of course, to prevent things from sticking, parchment paper or silicone baking mats.
Yes. Those are lifesavers.
She even specifically suggests Silpat, you know, those reusable silicone mats, which is nice. It's a more sustainable option.
I like that.
For tools, a medium-sized stainless steel balloon whisk is a must-have.
Definitely.
A sturdy wooden spoon, a flexible heat-proof spatula.
All the essentials.
Yes. And she also mentions having a larger, more flexible spatula for, like, gently folding batters and stuff.
Got it. Now, what about the more like specialized equipment that might come up in certain recipes?
Right. So for bakeware, she always lists the specific pan you'll need right at the beginning of the recipe. But her go-to is usually an anodized aluminum pan with high sides, light colored.
Why is that?
She says it helps with even heat distribution and it prevents the edges from browning too quickly.
Okay.
In fact, she specifically says to avoid using dark nonstick pans. And while a 9-inch diameter cake pan is her most used, some recipes will call for an 8-inch or 10-inch.
Got it.
And it's interesting, she actually points out that all her recipes, except for pies, were tested in metal pans because glass can retain heat differently and sometimes lead to overbaking.
Interesting.
She also mentions things like pastry bags and piping tips, although she says you can often use a gallon-sized resealable plastic bag in a pinch.
Oh, that's good to know.
And for baking pie crust, you know, pre-baking it, she recommends pie weights, or even just dried beans or rice, which most people have in their pantry.
That's a great tip. Okay, let's move on to the ingredients themselves. What are some of her pantry staples?
Oh, she's got some good ones.
Right, lay 'em on me.
So flour, big one, right?
Obviously, yeah.
And she emphasizes that even though flour has a long shelf life, using fresh flour really makes a difference. She likes using local flours whenever possible, but for consistency in her recipes, she always uses King Arthur all-purpose flour.
Okay.
And it's interesting, she mentions that it has a slightly higher protein content compared to some other brands.
Why is that important?
Well, protein content affects gluten development, which in turn affects the texture, like the chewiness of whatever you're baking.
Interesting. So you really do learn something new every day.
Right. What about sugar?
Sugar. Yeah, I know there's this trend towards less sweet desserts.
Oh, for sure.
What's Saffitz's take on that?
She definitely acknowledges that trend, and she personally prefers desserts that aren't super sweet. But she also stresses that sugar isn't just about sweetness, it plays a role in the texture, too.
Right.
So she actually advises against reducing the sugar in her recipes because it could mess with the final result.
Makes sense.
And she also talks about the difference between light and dark brown sugar. It's subtle, but it's important to use the right one.
So pay attention to the recipe.
Yep.
Okay, what about salt? It's so essential in baking.
Oh, absolutely crucial. It's not just for savory cooking.
Right.
She explains that salt actually enhances the flavors of all the other ingredients in a baked good.
So if you don't use enough salt, your dessert's going to taste flat.
Exactly. And because her recipes aren't overly reliant on sugar for flavor, she tends to use a bit more salt than you might see in other recipes.
Love it. And what kind of salt does she prefer?
Diamond crystal kosher salt.
Okay.
She says it has a finer texture, so it blends in better. And what about vanilla extract?
Oh, yeah. Vanilla. I mean, is there anything better?
Right. And she's got a strong opinion on this one.
Oh, yeah.
Always use pure vanilla extract,
Oh,
never the imitation stuff. She also suggests looking for fair trade brands for both extract and whole vanilla beans. And she even has a little tip for making your own vanilla extract.
Oh, how do you do that?
You just soak used vanilla bean pods in vodka.
Oh, wow. That's a great way to use them up. Okay, chocolate and cocoa powder. Those are big ones.
Yeah, so with chocolate, she reminds us that it's a plant-based ingredient.
Right.
And the quality can vary a lot, so it's worth spending a bit more for good chocolate.
Especially for baking.
Oh, yeah. Now, for chemical leaveners, she recommends aluminum-free baking powder, if you can find it.
Okay.
But she says any standard baking soda will work just fine. And for yeast, she mostly uses active dry yeast.
Okay.
And you know how some recipes have you proof the yeast separately?
Yeah?
Well, she generally just has you add it straight to the mixture.
Oh, interesting.
She says it's usually reliable enough, but she does caution against dissolving the yeast in liquid that's too hot. That can kill it.
It makes sense. You don't want to kill the yeast. Okay, so this has given us such a good overview of Saffitz's approach to ingredients and equipment and all that, but she also talks about baking with intention and sustainability.
Yes. And I think that adds such a nice layer to the book.
Oh, totally.
She's a big advocate for fair trade ingredients, especially chocolate, coffee, vanilla.
Makes sense. Being mindful of where your ingredients come from.
Exactly. And she's got some really practical tips for reducing waste in the kitchen, like composting, planning your grocery shopping so things don't go bad,
Right.
freezing stuff you won't use right away. And then she also talks about reducing single-use items.
Okay, like what?
Like using recycled paper towels, cloth towels, reusable pastry bags, silicone baking mats instead of parchment paper.
Yeah, all good things to be mindful of.
Right. And I think this all ties into what we've been talking about, having those multiple perspectives, adding a personal touch.
Definitely. Okay, so let's bring this all together and talk about some specific recipes from the book.
Oh, yes. Let's dive into some examples.
What are some that really showcase her style and the principles we've been discussing?
Okay, so first up, we've got the Spiced Honey and Rye Cake.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Yeah, and this one's a great example of how she uses less traditional flours.
Right.
The rye flour adds this really nice earthy flavor. And then you've got the warming spices, cinnamon, allspice, nutmeg, cloves.
Perfect for a fall day.
Oh, totally. And then another one that's a classic, but she gives it her own twist, is the banana bread.
Oh, I love banana bread.
Right. Everyone does. And she really emphasizes using overripe bananas.
The browner, the better.
Exactly, because that's where the flavor is. She also gives you the option of adding chopped toasted almonds for some extra texture.
I love that.
Then there's the double apple crumble cake,
Okay.
which showcases her love of fruit and layered flavors.
Tell me more.
So this recipe uses both fresh apples and apple butter.
Oh, wow.
So you get this really intense apple flavor throughout the whole cake.
It must be so moist.
Oh, yeah. And for those who aren't usually fans of flourless chocolate cake, she's got this amazing flourless chocolate wave cake.
A flourless chocolate cake that everyone will love.
Well, that's what she calls it.
Bold claim.
She says it's like a best of all worlds version. Super light, moist.
Color me intrigued.
Right. And then, showing off her adventurous side, there's the salty nut tart with rosemary.
Ooh, rosemary.
Yeah. It's infused into this sweet and salty nut filling.
That sounds really unique.
It is. A bit unexpected. And for a recipe that's all about texture, we've got the chewy molasses spice cookies.
Ooh, those sound good.
Yeah, and the name really says it all.
Soft, chewy.
Exactly. It's all about getting that perfect texture. And then, for something fun and easy, there are the brown butter corn muffins,
Okay.
which she describes as basically unfrosted cupcakes.
So they're like a sneaky treat.
Totally.
Cool.
And finally, to illustrate that whole miraculous transformation she talks about, there's the soft and crispy focaccia.
Focaccia, yeah.
You start with this super wet dough. It seems impossible.
Right, like how's that going to work?
Exactly. But
Yeah.
then it bakes up into this light, airy bread with this amazing crispy crust.
That's like magic.
It is. And it's worth noting that these recipes we've talked about, they span the whole range of difficulty levels in the book.
Okay, so it really gives you a sense of what the book has to offer.
Exactly.
All right, so wrapping things up, what are some of the key takeaways from Dessert Person?
So I think the biggest thing is that it's not just a cookbook. It's more like a guide to understanding baking.
Yeah, it's about more than just following recipes.
Exactly. It's about building your confidence, being creative.
Yeah, not being afraid to experiment.
Right. And Saffitz really emphasizes that balance we've been talking about.
Right. Flavors, textures.
Yeah. And her techniques are so approachable. It's a book for bakers of all levels.
I love that. So a final thought for our listeners. As you think about Saffitz's approach, consider this. How does understanding the why behind something, whether it's baking or anything else, change your experience? Like when you move beyond just blindly following steps and you actually understand the reasoning behind them, it becomes more intuitive.
Yeah, definitely. You're more engaged with the process.
Exactly. So what are some rules in other areas of your life that might be worth examining with this kind of like flexible mindset? Could demystifying those things bring you more enjoyment, more mastery? You know, kind of like it does in baking.
It's something to think about for sure. Yeah.
It is. And on that note, happy baking, everyone.
Happy baking.